Uh, okay. Good morning. We are having a seminar today on. There are a lot of questions in theory part from transplantation, and we are not covering the whole aspect of transplantation today. Some basic things about organ transplantation. So to me, it will be Dr. Ramdeep Rai, who is a very renowned transplant surgeon. He has shifted from Delhi to Calcutta. He is in Apollo Gynecological Hospital. So Ramdeep is regular in transplant work. So Ramdeep will take us to the seminar on organ transplantation. So I start with Dr. Ran Bijoy, who is a first-year junior resident at Ramakrishna Mission, Shah Pratishthan. He will talk on immunobiology of organ transplantation. So this is not specific of particular organ transplantation, just a basic outline about immunobiology of organ transplantation. So Ranvija, you can start.
Yes, sir. Sir. Sir, 1 minute, sir.
Yeah. Ranvija, share your screen.
Yes, sir, he's sharing his screen, but can you see the slide, sir? Yes, sir. Good morning, sir. Where is slide? Sir, can you see the slide, sir? Yes, sir.
Slides are not, Dr. Ramija.
Sorry, sir. Just 1 minute. Slide. Sir, 1 minute, sir. Slide. Sir, can you see the slides?
No, not yet.
We can see your screen, but the slides are not visible.
Okay, so just 1 minute.
Open your presentation.
Just 1 minute, sir. What is the... So try to share the.
You first open up the presentation and
Yes,
then
sir.
share.
Okay. Share.
You can start by stop sharing, then open the presentation, then go back to start sharing.
Yes, sir.
Stop share, open the presentation, again share.
Stop sharing. Open the star and then.
Maybe. तुम्हारा presentation?
Presenting from your
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Yes.
Ranvija, you are visible.
Yes, sir.
You can start. Yes.
Yes, sir. So can you see the slide, sir?
Yes. Yes. Yes.
You
Please
can-
start.
Sir, good morning, sir. Today's topic is immunobiology of organ transplant, the goals and objectives, the principal components, the role of HLA in immunogenic response, the understand the three signal pathway of T cell activation and its clinical significance. The classification of the graft, the autologous graft, the graft transplanted from one part of the body to the another in the same individual. The syngeneic graft or isograft, the graft transplanted between the two genetically identical individuals of the same species. The allogenic graft, or also called allograft, the graft transplanted between two genetically different individuals of the same species. The xenogenic graft is the graft transplanted between the individual of different species. The immune responses to transplanted tissue. The transplant rejection caused by genetic differences between donor and the recipient, the HLA and the blood group antigen. The alloantigens, the antigens which vary between members of same species. The alloreaction, the immune response to an alloantigen. The alloreactions in transplantation, the host versus graft, that is the transplant rejection and graft versus host. Now, the main important components are T cell that arises in the thymus from bone marrow derived precursors. Each T cell has unique T cell receptor. There are two types of selections, the positive and the negative in the thymus. The subtype are CD4 T cells, that is antigen specific immune response, and CD8 T cell, the precursor of cytotoxic T cells and represented class 1 MSC. Now, the B cells that arise and mature in bone marrow. There is only negative selection. They express the B cell receptors on their surface. When the B cell receptor is stimulated, the B cell secrete antibody of the same specificity as their B cell receptors. Now, the antigen presenting cell, the most important, activate T cell, endocytose antigen and display it on the MSC molecule. The T cell recognize and interact with the antigen MSC to become activate. The MSC complexes, the encode molecule crucial to initiate and propagation of immune response. The HLA complex on chromosome 6 contain over 200 genes, more than 40 of which encode leukocyte antigen. The HLA genes that are involved in the immune response fall into two classes, the 1 and 2, which are structurally and functionally different. The type of MSC. There are three classes of MSC molecule. The class 1 encode glycoprotein expressed on the surface of nearly all the nucleated cell. The major function of the class 1 gene is presentation of peptide antigen to the cytotoxic T cell. The class 2 encode glycoprotein expressed primarily on antigen presenting cell, examples macrophage, dendritic cell, and the B cell, where they present proceed antigen peptide to T helper cell. The class 3 encode various secreted proteins that have immune function, including component of the complement system C2, C4, factor B, TNF, and molecule involved in inflammation. The function of MSC. The function of both class and class 2 molecule is the presentation of short pathogen-derived peptide to the T cell, a process that initiates the adaptive immune response. The class 1 sample systolic protein and detect fluorescent protein that would indicate an intracellular pathogen such as virus or intracellular bacteria, recognized by CD8 T cell and provide a surveillance mechanism to target infected cell for destruction. The class 1 present peptide derived from endogenously synthesized protein. Responding T cell express CD8+. The class 2 system is designated to sample extracellular protein by specialized antigen presenting cells. The class 2 are recognized by CD4 helper T cell and allow for the generation of immune response to invading pathogens. The class 2 present peptide derived from exogenously synthesized protein. Responding T cell express CD4+. The class 1 gene code for the polypeptide chain of the class 1 molecule. The beta chain of the class 1 molecule is encoded by a gene on chromosome 15, the beta 2 microglobulin gene. There are some 20 class 1 gene in the HLA region. 3 of these, HLA A, B, and C, the so-called classic or class 1A gene, are the main actors in the immunologic theater. The structure of class 1. The 2 polypeptide chain, a long alpha chain and a short beta, that is beta 2 microglobulin. There are 4 regions. The cytoplasmic region containing site for phosphorylation and binding to cytoskeleton element. The transmembrane region containing hydrophobic amino acid. A highly conserved alpha-3 domain to which CD8 bind. A highly polymorphic peptide binding region formed from the alpha-1 and alpha-2 domain. The beta-2 microglobulin help stabilizes the conformation. The structure. The class 2 gene code for the alpha and beta polypeptide chain of the class 2 molecule. The designation of their loci on chromosome 6 consists of 3 letters. The first D indicate the class, the second M, Q, over R, the family, and the third A or B, the chain. The HLA, DRB, for example, stand for class 2 gene for the R family, coding for the beta chain. The structure of the class 2 MSC, the 2 polypeptide chain alpha and beta of the roughly equal length. 4 region, the cytoplasmic region containing site for phosphorylation and binding to cytoskeleton element. The structure, the 4 region, the transmembrane region containing hydrophobic amino acid, a highly conserved alpha-2 and a highly conserved beta-2 domain to which CD4 bind, a highly polymorphic peptide binding region formed from the alpha-1 and beta-1 domain. Important aspects of MSC. Normally, the protein that undergo recycling are the organism own, but in infected cell, protein originating from the pathogen also routed into the processing pathway. With the exception of jaw vertebra, no organism appeared to make a distinction between the peptide derived from their own protein and those derived from the foreign protein. Jaw vertebra, by contrast, use the peptide derived from foreign, usually microbial, protein to mark infected cell for destruction. Protein processing and loading of peptide onto class 1 molecule are taking place all the time in the most cell. There is always plenty of material to feed the processing machinery because worn out, damaged, and misfolded protein are continuously being degraded and replaced by new one. By contrast, the processing of exogenous protein and the loading of peptide onto class 2 molecule are normally restricted to B cell, macrophages, and dendritic cell, which are very efficient in taking a material by endocytosis or phagocytosis. The consequence of the protein processing is that the surface of cell become bound with peptide-laden HLA molecule amounting on a per cell basis roughly 1 lakh to 3 lakh class 1 or class 2 product of each of the highly expressed HLA loci. Since each HLA molecule has one peptide bound to it, each unaffected cell display 100,000 of cell peptide on its surface. Each cell thus display a heterogeneous collection of peptide, and the surface of a cell resemble row well-stocked shelter or a bazaar with a virgin hunter searching the well. But if this metaphor, the vendor are the HLA molecule and the peptide, the good, who are potential buyer. They are a group of lymphocytes rare in the thymus and the turn loose to roam the body, the T cell. The function of the and characteristics of HLA. The HLA are the cell surface protein involved in the recognition of self and non-self by the immune system. The HLA present antigen to the immune system that is resistant to viral and bacterial pathogen. The HLA are codominantly expressed, highly polymorphic and polygenic. Polymorphism and polygyny. MSC gene are polymorphic, that is, there are large number of alleles for each gene. The MSC gene are polygenic, that is, there are a number of different MSC genes. The class 1 polymorphism, the locus is a HLA-A 451, HLA-B 782, HLA-C the 238. There are also HLA-A, E, F, and G, relative few alleles. Why polymorphism? Multiple alleles of HLA in a population increases the likelihood the population will survive a pathogen threat. Unfortunately, it also causes histoincompatibility in organ and tissue transplant. Primary HLA products that contribute to rejection are the most polymorphic, including HLA-A, B, and DR. Efforts are made to match HLA-A, B, and DR gene and the protein in kidney transplant. HLA profile, there are tissue typing, cross-matching tests, and panel reactive antibodies. Tissue typing help to identify two alleles at each of the three loci. One allele from mother and one from the father. If their mother or father, 25% chance of full match. One sibling, 25% chance of full match. And to two siblings, there are 44% chance of full match. The HLA matching, 3-year graft survival, 93% and 85% for HLA match or mismatch live donor. In cadaveric graft, 82 to 76 and 76%. Most benefit with zero mismatch. Cross-matching test, serum of potential recipient is incubated with cell from possible donor. If recipient has anti-donor antibody, there is a strong likelihood that recipient would destroy transplant by antibody-mediated rejection. Panel reactive antibodies. The anti-HLA antibody in the serum of a person can be assessed as a panel reactive antibody. Testing the serum of the patient against a panel of cells or antigen prepared from many different donors using cytotoxicity and flow cytometry. The results are expressed as percent of positive donor. The T cell activation. The activation of T cell is a crucial step in the generation of immune response to specific antigen. Naive T cell are restricted to SLO. They interact with the dendritic cells that have migrated from the periphery in response to infection or injury. Once native T cell encounter their fungent antigen present on the mature dendritic cell, they become activated. Following activation, CD4 T cell help B cell to convert to plasma cell. The plasma cell produce antibodies. Generation of T cell effector function. Alloreactive T cell can be found in both naive and memory T cell. The naive T cells may be triggered by donor or recipient antigen presenting cell to proliferate and develop effector function. Memory cell can be activated in the same manner or by recognizing cell in endograft directly. The reaction mediated by naive T cell take longer to develop than those mediated by memory T cell. The structure of the T cell receptor, the heterodimer with one alpha and one beta chain of the roughly equal length, a short cytoplasmic tail not capable of transducing an activation signal, the transmembrane region with hydrophobic amino acid. Both alpha and beta chain have a variable and constant region. The variable region of the alpha and beta chain contain hypervariable region that determine the specificity for the antigen. Each T cell bears T cell receptor of only one specificity, the allelic exclusion. The T cell receptor and CD3 complex. The TCR is closely associated with the group of protein collectively called the CD3 complex, the gamma chain the delta 2 eta and 2 epsilon chain. The CD3 protein are invariant. The role of CD3 complexes. The CD3 complex necessary for the cell surface expression of the T cell receptor during T cell development. The CD3 complex transduce signal to the interior of the cell following interaction of antigen with the T cell receptor. The immunological synapse, the interaction between the T cell receptor and MSC molecule are not strong. SS3 molecule stabilize the interactions. The CD4 class 2 or CD8 class 1, CD2 LF3 or LF1 and ICAM1. The specificity for the antigen resides slowly in the T cell receptor. The SS3 molecule are invariant. Expression is increased in response to cytokines. The engagement of T cell receptor and antigen MSC is one signal needed for activation of T cell. Second signal comes from the co-stimulatory molecule, that is CD28 on the T cell interacting with B7 1 or CD8 or B7 2 CD86 and other. Co-stimulating molecule are invariant immunological synapse. The co-stimulation is necessary for the T cell activation. The engagement of T cell receptor and an antigen MSC in the absence of co-stimulation can lead to energy. Engagement of co-stimulatory molecule in the absence of T cell receptor engagement result in no response. Activation only occurs when the both T cell receptor and co-stimulatory molecule are engaged with their respective ligand. Downregulation occurs if CTLA4 interact with B7. The CTLA4 send inhibitory signals. Signal 1 and 2 activate calcineurin pathway, MAP kinase pathway, and NF-kB pathway. These pathways activate transcription factor that trigger the expansion of many new molecules, including interleukin-2, CD154, and CD25. Interleukin-2 and other cytokine activate the TOR pathway to provide signal 3, the trigger for cell proliferation. A subset of activated helper T cell migrate to the B region of the lymph node located in the cortex and help to differentiate B cell, while the remainder of the affected T cell leave the lymph node and proceed the inflamed side. The activated T cell rapidly accumulate in the interstitium of the allograft as the response mount in the first few days. The CD4 T cells are cytokine secreting cells that express interleukin 2 and after a variety of cytokines. The CD4 cell help B cell to enhance their antibody production through CD40 ligand. The allo antibody produced during the rejection is mainly IgG and primarily participate in the destruction of vascular endothelium of the graft. The CD8 T cell participate in the rejection through DTH or the cytotoxicity. The key step in the T cell activation, the APC must process and present peptide to T cell. The T cell must receive a co-stimulatory signal, usually from CD28 or B7. The SS3 addition molecule help to stabilize binding of T cell and APC, that CD4 plus MSC class 2 or CD8 MSC class 1, LF1 or ICAM1, CD2, LF3. The signal from the cell surface is transmitted to the nucleus, that is second messenger. The cytokine produced to help drive cell division, that is interleukin-2 and other. Thank you. Hello.
Yeah, we can have some discussion.
Yes, sir.
Sir is mute.
Yeah, Dr. Ramdi, you are muted.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
And I don't know whether Dr. Shah will agree or with me or not on this, but I think this is a very bad presentation. And there is no point having presentations like this where you have filled a lot of information, most probably from the internet. And I don't know whether you have assimilated the information that you have presented on the slides. If you have assimilated that information and you can reproduce it, then you're a brilliant student. But otherwise, this exercise will not help you at all, because you have not tried to simplify in any way what is available on the internet. And that is my first impression.
Yeah. Actually, I was thinking that he should have presented that what is practically applied for working a patient for transplantation and their implications. He has not talked about even blood grouping antigens that are also taken into account for the transplantation. So I was feeling that immunobiology would have been the important aspect. He has talked very exhaustively, but they are more of theoretical discussions. Ramdeep, I would ask you, what are the important things you consider for a pre-transplant situation?
Yeah. So, are you there on the video? This Ranvijay were.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, of the solid organs that we're looking at, first tell me, do you understand what is hyperacute rejection? Do you have any idea what is hyperacute rejection?
Yes, sir. Sir, in hyperacute rejection, there are rejection within the minute to hours. This is due to the presence of the blood group and blood group antibody or preformed antibody present. Incomplete and blood group transfusion or preformed antibody due to pre-transplantation or pregnancy or otherwise.
Most commonly, it is because we're doing it incompatible ABO. So I give A to B. The person already has anti-A antibodies, so these are preformed, pre-existing antibodies. So they immediately attack the graft and they attack the endothelium in the small vessels, and because this happens, therefore there is a need for ABO compatible. You talked about autologous transplantation.
Yes, sir.
Can you give an example of autologous transplantation?
Sir, in some skin grafting is the example of autologous transplantation, or autologous blood transfusion is also.
Yes, and any other organ? Pancreas.
Yes, sir.
Sometimes you can take out the pancreatic cells. That's autologous. Yeah. You talked about HLA.
Yes, sir.
Now, what is the practical role of HLA testing in organ transplantation?
So the HLA is a main component of the rejection. So we are before plantation, in pre-plantation, we are trying to match the HLA molecule. So in the class, so basically we take.
I am your relative. Our blood group is matched.
Yes,
I need to donate the kidney to you.
Yes, sir.
Do we need to do any HLA testing?
Sir, yes, sir.
What is that test called? HLA?
Sir, HLA tissue typing is
HLA cross match.
Yes, sir, cross match.
We do a cross match. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Now I plan to donate my liver to you.
Yes, sir.
Do I need to do an HLA cross match?
Sir, in liver transplant, HLA matching is I think not mandatory. In a blood group is mandatory for the liver transplant.
Blood group is mandatory for both generally. So
Yes, sir.
why is HLA cross match not mandatory for liver?
I don't know, sir.
So because it is believed that the liver is an immunologically privileged organ where it is believed to absorb the alloantibodies from the HLA, which normally would attack in a kidney. But there's a lot of research nowadays that there is some little role of HLA cross match also.
Yes.
Now, besides HLA cross match, any other HLA test which can be done in the context of transplantation?
Sir, HLA,
With that kidney,
yes, sir.
any idea? What is HLA fingerprinting?
No,
So the HLA, the different antigens, the 6 antigens that you have described, we can do the HLA fingerprinting that is identified to establish relationship. When in living donor liver transplantation, the government requires the relation to be proved. Then whether a son is donating to a father or a brother is donating to his sister, then we can do an HLA fingerprinting to establish relationship, to confirm that it is also useful in paternity tests. So one is HLA fingerprinting, that is for relationship proof, and the second is HLA cross match, which is more important for kidney than for liver.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, someone asked what is HLA. HLA is human leukocyte antigen. So that contains a lot of antigens, and that has to be matched before you go for important organ transplantation. Okay. So actually, you have given more of the immunobiology aspect. We're talking more of the practical aspect of this HLA and its importance in organ transplantation. Okay.
Yes, sir.
So next speaker will be Dr. Milind. He will speak on mechanism of graft rejection. So we'll have some idea about the immunobiology again, which is responsible for rejection of graft.
Good morning, respected teachers. I am Dr. Milind Alokji, first year DMD PGT, and the topic that I'll be covering today is mechanism and types of graft rejection. Now, in case of graft rejection, we see that allografts, they give rise to a powerful immune response, which leads to rapid graft rejection. And T lymphocytes play the most essential role in case of graft rejection. Now, rejection response is because of allelic differences at polymorphic genes that give rise to histocompatibility antigens. Now, what are these histocompatibility antigens? They can be ABO blood group antigens and HLA. ABO blood group antigens, they are expressed by most cells and they are likely to cause hyperacute graft rejection, and they can be the groups can be O, A, B, and AB. And these ABO blood group antigens are basically, they are known as antigen recognition units because they present the antigen to the T lymphocyte. Now, RH has no role in case of it has no role in case of organ transplant because the RH antigen is present on the RBCs and it is not present on the parenchymal organ cells. Now, next we come to the HLA antigen. Now, these are the most common cause of graft rejection. They are highly polymorphic cell surface molecules and they are strong transplant antigens. And HLA has been covered by the previous speaker in detail. Two things that I'd like to mention is that the most important HLA for organ transplant is HLA-D, and HLA matching is not needed for liver, heart, and cornea. In case of heart, it is beneficial, but due to the extremely short cold ischemic time of heart, which is 3 hours, it is usually not done. Now we come to the effector mechanism of graft rejection. Now here we see that there are two cells which are involved. One is the antigen presenting cell and the other is the T cell. Now the T cell has to be activated, and for the activation of the T cells, two signals are required. Without the two signals, T cells will not be activated. How do these two signals come? The antigen presenting cell has the MHC or the HLA complex which presents the antigen, and this interacts with the T cell receptor. This peptide MHC complex will give the first signal. The second signal will come because of the interaction of the other CD markers that are there on the APC, such as CD4, CD80, CD40. When they interact with the other CD markers, such as 28 and 154, or the others that might be there, this interaction leads to the second signal. Only when these two signals will be present will the T cell will be activated and the immune response will take place. So if in some way we can block this second signal, then the T cell activation can be stopped. This is in brief the effector mechanism of how graft rejection takes place. Now, this is a more detailed view of the T cell receptor complex. Here is the MHC complex with the alpha and the beta chain, and in the lower side we see the T cell with the the multiple subunits that he has, and we see that all these the first half is what together constitutes as the first signal, the interaction. This is the peptide MHC complex, And then we have the second part where we have the CD80 interacting with the CD28, and this gives the second signal. Now, MHC1 interacts with CD8 T cell and MHC2 interacts with CD4 T cell. Now, the difference between these two is that MHC1 basically takes up the proteins that are already inside the cell. So these are the cytosolic microbes that are broken down. The proteins are taken up by the MHC class 1 and then they are presented to the CD8 T cell. Whereas MHC2 complex will take up proteins that are outside the cell. They will break it down into peptides, take it up and present it to the CD4 T cell. So these are the two MHC1 and MHC2 pathways. But the more important thing is how this MHC1 and MHC2 finally acts on the organ. Now there are two pathways. One is the direct pathway and indirect pathway. Now in case of the direct pathway, we have class 1 and class 2 MHCs. They interact with CD8 plus T cells and CD4 plus T cells. CD8 plus T cells are cytotoxic T cells. They will directly act on the organ with perforations and granzymes, and they will disrupt the organ membrane and cause the destruction of the vessel. Whereas in case of CD4 plus T cell, they will initiate cytokines such as interferon gamma, and they will cause tissue damage, that is local delayed hypersensitivity reaction. This is the direct pathway. In case of the indirect pathway, we have the CD4 plus T cell is functioning as in the case of the direct pathway through interferon gamma and other cytokines. But these CD4 plus helper T cells will also activate the B lymphocyte. And this will lead to activation of plasma cell, creation of antibodies, and these antibodies will go and they will further cause damage. So this is the one difference between the direct and the indirect pathway, that in the indirect pathway, we have the antibodies also getting activated. Now we come to the types of graft rejection. Now there is hyperacute graft rejection, which occurs immediately, acute, which occurs within the first 6 months, and chronic, which occurs months and years after transplantation. And there is another thing known as graft versus host disease. Now, allograft rejection will leads to functional failure of the transplant, and this can be confirmed by histological specimen. Now, what are the histological specimens? Now, what are the biopsy specimens that are needed? In case of renal and pancreas grafts, we can take this by needle biopsy. Hepatic grafts by percutaneous or transjugular liver biopsy. Cardiac grafts, transjugular endomyocardial biopsy. Lung grafts, transbronchial biopsy, and small intestine mucosal biopsy from the glioblastoma or proximally by endoscopy. Now, another a short note about the Banff classification. Now, this is a standardized histological grading that is used that defines the presence and severity of allograft rejection after transplantation. As we can see, there are 6 grades, and with the help of this, the allograft rejection can be defined as histologically. Now, we come to hyperacute graft rejection. Now, when does it happen? It happens immediately. The cause is the presence in the recipient of preformed antibodies against HLA class 1 antigen or ABO expressed by the donor. And where do these antibodies come from? They can come from a previous blood transplantation, a failed transplant or pregnancy, an ABO blood group incompatible organ graft being performed inadvertently. This is the source of the antibody, and this leads to the immediate hyperacute graft rejection. Now, the graft is given. There is revascularization of the graft. The antibodies immediately bind to the vasculature. The complement system is activated, and this leads to extensive intravascular thrombosis, interstitial hemorrhage, and graft dissection within hours and minutes. So here, as we can see, there is the vessel and the alloantigen is present. The circulating antibody binds to it, and we have immediate complement activation and graft destruction. So there'll be platelet and thrombin thrombi. There'll be early neutrophil infiltration, and complement CD4 will be present on the line. Now, most vulnerable to hyperacute graft rejection is kidney. Heart and liver transplant are resistant. For diagnosis, we see that the organ rapidly becomes cyanotic, mottled, and in case of kidney, it may excrete a few drops of bloody urine. And hyperacute graft rejection is universally preventable with the proper use of a cross-match and other means of detecting donor-specific antibodies before transplantation and ensuring that ABO blood group compatibility is there. Pre-transplant blood group typing and cross-matching have virtually eliminated the incidence of hyperacute rejection. So a brief word about cross-matching. In cross-matching, we take the cells from the donor, we add them to the serum from the recipient, and we add complement if needed. And we check for a lysis of the donor cell. If there is lysis of the donor cell, then that means that is a positive cross-match. And a negative cross-match assay with the proper ABO matching will effectively prevent hyperacute rejection in 99.5% of the transplant cases. Now, there are newer techniques for cross-matching, such as flow cytometric technique and beam-based screening assay. And one thing that is known as a panel reactive antibody assay. Now, what is a panel reactive? Here we take a panel of random donor cells representing a likely regional donor pool, and the patient's given patient sensitivity status is screened, like a potential recipient serum is screened against a panel of random donor cells representing a likely regional donor pool, and this screens for patient sensitization. So the percentage of panel within the randomly selected cell set that lies when the serum recipient is added gives us the result. So a non-sensitized patient will have a 0% PRA result, and a highly sensitized patient will have a 100%. Now we come to acute graft rejection. Now, when does this happen? This happens within the first 6 months, but it can occur later. It is the most common type of rejection, and it can be successfully reversed even after it is established. Mechanism, the most important, is T-cell mediated rejection. There can also be acute vascular rejection and antibody mediated rejection. Now, this again is it can be direct alloantigen rejection or indirect. Direct will when the donor APC will be identified by the T cell, and indirect will when the donor APC will give the antigen to the recipient APC, and then it will be identified by the T cell. Now, here again, the most common pathology is there is interstitial mononuclear cell infiltrate, and there is antibody mediated damage, that is the vasculitis. All types of organ allografts typically are vulnerable, and they typically acute rejection occurs in 20 to 30% of the grafts. The diagnosis can be from biopsies of the transplanted organs, special immunological stains, and laboratory tests. Now, such as there will be elevated creatinine levels in case of kidney transplant, elevated liver tests in liver transplant, elevated level of glucose amylase in pancreas transplant. Now, prevention, effective immunosuppression. Aggressive initially, and slowly then we taper it down. Intense monitoring, especially for the first year after the transplant. Most episodes of acute cellular rejection can be reversed by additional immunosuppressive therapy, and the antibody rejection is more difficult to treat and may require plasmapheresis. Prompt recognition is essential for prolonged graft survival. If there is untreated rejection, then it will lead to expansion of the immune response by multiple pathways. Then finally, we come to chronic graft rejection. Now, when does this happen? This happens after the first 6 months. And the major cause of allograft failure, which is becoming slowly more common, it is slow and usually is progressive. Now, the mechanisms include alloantibody, which is the major mechanism, immunological and cellular. And chronic graft fibrosis and deterioration is secondary to both immune and non-immune factors. Now, after graft transplantation, there is alloantigens and ischemic perfusion injury. Now, this leads to two pathways. One is expression of soluble factors, including TGF-beta, that remodels the parenchyma and causes fibrous replacement. This also, the ischemic perfusion injury can also lead to chronic inflammation that leads to epithelial to mesenchymal dedifferentiation, and finally, epithelial cells regress to fibrosis. Now, here as we can see that there is chronic inflammation is causing intimal smooth muscle cell proliferation and vessel occlusion. So the pathology is mostly dominated by vascular changes, that is myointimal proliferation, ischemia and fibrosis, and parenchymal replacement by fibrous tissues. Now, the common risk factors, now these risk factors, although expressed in a general way, are most common, these are most specific for a kidney transplant patients. Previous episodes of acute rejection, especially in case of kidney transplant, the most important risk factor for chronic rejection is previous episodes of acute rejection. Then poor HLA match, long cold ischemic time, all these are common risk factors. And to describe chronic rejection for different organs, we use specific terminology, such as for kidney, we call interstitial fibrosis, heart, chronic coronary vasculopathy, liver, vanishing bile duct syndrome, and lung, bronchiolitis obliterans. Now, all types of transplants are susceptible to chronic rejection. Liver is more resistant than other organs. Diagnosis is by progressive failure manifested by rise in serum markers and functional deterioration over a period of 4 to 6 months. And there is little effect of immunosuppressives to prevent chronic rejection. More effective is that we give immune control to limit the acute rejection episodes in the early stages. If the number of acute rejection episodes is decreased, then the chance of chronic rejection also decreases. Finally, a small word about graft versus host disease. They occur in any situation in which an immunologically competent cell or their precursors are transplanted into an immunologically crippled recipient. Most commonly vulnerable are bone marrow transplantation. Among solid organs, liver and small bowel, because they have a lot of lymphoid tissue. There's a characteristic rash on palms and sole, and liver can be involved after small bowel transplantation, GI tract after liver transplantation. And prevention is by HLA matched donor and recipient using sensitive DNA sequencing methods. Now, very briefly, I will try to go over organ-specific rejection. Liver was the first successful liver transplant was by Stahls in 1963, and rejection, although frequent, is rarely a cause of graft failure. Early signs of functioning of the liver graft is acid clearance, normalization of clotting parameters, and rejection of liver does not adversely affect patient or graft survival rate. Now, the diagnosis is mainly by bile duct injury or endothelitis. Treatment is increasing the steroid or changing the immunosuppressive therapy. And especially, but in cases of patients with underlying hepatitis C, increased steroids are avoided in favor of increasing immunosuppression. Kidney, the first successful transplant was by Murray in 1954. Kidney is more susceptible to hyperacute rejection, and there is outright necrosis and infarction, and the kidney becomes non-functioning. Acute cellular rejection is most common within the initial months, and clinical and biochemical signs of renal failure will be present. Pancreas, first successfully done by William Kelly and Richard Lehle, and this is the most common non-surgical complication post-transplant for pancreas is rejection. And the rejection rates have come down now with better immunosuppression. Serum amylase and lipase level are important for diagnosis, and the diagnosis can be confirmed by percutaneous pancreas graft biopsy. Small intestine, first successfully done by Deltz and colleague, highest rate of rejection due to lymphoid tissue. Signs and symptoms they basically mimic viral gastroenteritis, so it is many times difficult to diagnose, and therefore rejection remains closely associated with rates of graft failure and mortality. There are various severity, but most important is that diagnosis is by ileoscopy through the ostomy, and this should be typically begin between POD 5 and 7, and biopsy remains specimens to be obtained once or twice weekly for the first 1 to 3 months, and as needed for symptoms thereafter. Liver appears to have a protective effect for rejection of the intestine. Thank you.
Very nice presentation and very nicely assimilated information, I would say. Thank you. So, how do you, very simplistically, what is your understanding? When would you suspect after a liver transplant? When do you suspect that someone is having rejection?
So we should keep a close watch on the liver function test, sir. If the any kind of serum markers that are associated with livers, mainly the liver function test, if they are getting elevated, so then we should suspect that the graft is failing, sir.
Yes. So, which component of the liver LFT?
So the clotting factors, if the clotting factors are not, if they are again getting deranged, if the total bilirubin, if it is again increasing, SGPT, SGOT generally.
So hyperacute rejection due to preformed antibodies to blood group, they cause vascular thrombosis and all this. So that's why you came up with clotting factors. They have no role as such in diagnosing acute rejection. For acute cellular rejection, we only look at SGOT, SGPT. SGOT, SGPT, they are the markers of hepatocellular damage. So because there is extensive neutrophilic infiltration in the cells, therefore you first find SGOT, SGPT rising, and that is your reason to suspect rejection. We may or may not do a liver biopsy. Liver biopsy often is considered risky because the graft may be swollen initially, but a rising SGOT, SGPT is the most common reason for that. Bilirubin rises later. If rejection is suspected, then what is done? What is the plan of management?
So in case of liver, so the immunosuppression is increased, sir.
Yeah, for anything, the standard idea is that everyone will have rejection to some extent. Unless the transplant is from a genetically identical twin, there will always be a response with rejection. And the idea is that the immunosuppression has to be titrated. As the rejection increases, the immunosuppression has to be just titrated to it. We don't want too much immunosuppression because then the side effects are too high. We just want to keep titrating. By looking at SGOT, SGPT, one, looking at the blood level of the immunosuppressant drug, which is the most common immunosuppression drug that is nowadays used for immunosuppression. Tacrolimus. It is a calcineurin inhibitor, CNI, same group as cyclosporin. Cyclosporin was the one thing that really changed the outlook in in organ transplantation, and almost a 10% improvement in survival came in when tacrolimus was introduced. That is now the mainstay of immunosuppression. So we check the tacrolimus level in blood. So you might require 3 milligram dose, I might require 1 milligram dose, but to get a tacrolimus level. So enzymes, tacrolimus level, and signs of toxicity, side effects of the drugs, they have to be titrated to give. So rejection is very common, and rejection is very often easily treatable. If rejection becomes too high, then we need some strong immunosuppression to bring it down and then continue with tacrolimus and all. So what medicine can we give if there is an acute cellular rejection which is severe?
So steroids.
Steroids. Methylprednisolone is the most commonly used steroid. It is given in a bolus, high dose. That's called a steroid pulse. A steroid pulse for 3 days to bring it down and then maintain. Thank you. I think you've got a good understanding from this presentation.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. So the graft rejection is part of transplantation work. So there are some measures. Everyone, even if you have a HLA matching transplant being done, patient need to be on immunosuppression therapy. So next speaker, Dr. Onkar Nath, will speak on the treatment for immunosuppressive and its complications. Onkar, first year DNB PGT at MR Bangalore.
Good morning, sir, seniors, and my dear friends. Myself, Dr. Onkar Nath, DNB PGT first year, here to present seminar on immunosuppression and its complication. First, coming to the immunosuppressive therapy, we have calcineurin inhibitors like cyclosporin and tacrolimus. Calcineurin inhibitor is the mainstay of immunosuppressive therapy, but it has very small therapeutic window. It is mainly used in the maintenance therapy. Mechanism of action of cyclosporin, it binds to the cyclophilin. This complex inhibits calcineurin phosphatase and T cell activation. And mechanism of action of tacrolimus is it binds to the FKBP12. This complex inhibits calcineurin phosphatase and T cell activation. Now, side effect of cyclosporin, it has nephrotoxicity, hypertension, dyslipidemia, hirsutism, gingival hyperplasia, and neurotoxicity. And side effects associated with tacrolimus is nephrotoxicity, hypertension, dyslipidemia, neurotoxicity, post-transplantation diabetes. Neurotoxicity and post-transplantation diabetes is most commonly associated with tacrolimus, while hirsutism, gingival hyperplasia, nephrotoxicity, all these are most commonly associated with cyclosporin. Now coming to anti-proliferative agent, we have azathioprine and mycophenolic acid preparation. Coming to azathioprine, it is a prodrug, and by hepatic metabolism, it converts into the 6-mercaptopurine, which is the active form. Mechanism of action: Convert 6 mercaptopurine to 6 thioinosine 5 monophosphate, which is converted to thioguanine nucleotides that interfere with DNA and purine synthesis. Side effect, it can cause bone marrow suppression, GI symptoms, and hepatotoxicity. Now coming to mycophenolic acid derivatives, it is derived from the fungus Penicillium stoloniferum. Mechanism of action, it inhibits synthesis of guanosine monophosphate nucleotides, which block purine synthesis and thereby preventing proliferation of both T and B cells. What are the side effects? It can cause leukopenia, thrombocytopenia, and GI symptoms, mainly diarrhea. Now steroids. It is a widespread anti-inflammatory effect. It is an important component of immunosuppressive regimen. It can be used as rescue therapy for acute rejection episodes in the higher dose. Most commonly used steroids for immunosuppressive therapy is prednisolone. And mechanism of action, it binds nuclear receptor and enhances transcription of I-kappa B, which inhibit NF-kappa B and T cell activation. Side effects can cause hypertension, dyslipidemia, diabetes, osteoporosis, avascular necrosis, adrenal suppression. Now coming to mTOR inhibitors, we have sirolimus and everolimus. Sirolimus is the macrolide derivative derived from Streptomyces hygroscopicus. Mechanism of action, it binds to FKBP12. This complex inhibits target of rapamycin and interleukin-2 dependent T cell proliferation. Side effects can cause thrombocytopenia, dyslipidemia, pneumonitis, impaired wound healing, lymphocyte formation, mouth ulcer, and interstitial lung disease. Negative effects on wound healing and lymphocyte formation, it can limit immediate use of mTOR inhibitors after transplantation. To minimize calcineurin inhibitor-induced nephrotoxicity, we can switch from calcineurin inhibitors to mTOR inhibitors. Now, coming to the lymphocyte depletion preparations, we have antithymocyte globulin. It is a polyclonal immunoglobulin G from rabbits or horse immunized with human thymocytes. Most commonly used preparations are rabbit antithymocyte globulin and horse antithymocyte globulin. It can be used as induction agent as well as rescue treatment for acute rejection episodes. Rabbit antithymocyte globulin is more effective than horse antithymocyte globulin at reducing the incidence of acute rejection episodes. It blocks T cell membrane proteins like CD2, CD3, CD45, which causing altered function, lysis, and prolonged which cause prolonged T cell depletion. Various side effects associated with this thrombocytopenia, leukopenia, serum sickness, cytokine release syndrome. Most commonly, rabbit antithymocyte globulin used as a part of multi-drug induction protocol that include calcineurin inhibitor, mycophenolate, mofetil, and prednisolone. Now coming to the monoclonal antibody OKT3. It is anti-CD3 murine monoclonal antibody. It was first commercially available monoclonal antibody preparation for use in organ transplantation. It is effective during acute rejection episodes by interfering with immune function of prime antigen specific T cell, but it can elicit an immune response itself. Mechanism of action, it binds CD3 associated with T cell receptor, leading to initial activation and cytokine release, followed by blockade of the function, lysis, and T cell depletion. Various side effects associated are severe cytokine release syndrome, pulmonary edema, acute renal failure. Now, basiliximab, it is anti-CD25 chimeric monoclonal antibody. Mechanism of action, it binds to high affinity chain of interleukin-2R on activated T cells, causing depletion and preventing interleukin-2 mediated activation. Side effects associated is hypersensitivity reaction. Now, daclizumab, it is anti-CD25 humanized monoclonal antibody. Mechanism of action and side effects are similar to that of basiliximab. Both basiliximab and daclizumab is used during induction phase 1. It can prevent or reduce frequency of acute rejection. Other immunoglobulin therapy, we have rituximab with anti-CD20 chimeric monoclonal antibody. It binds to CD20 on B cells and causes depletion of the B cells. Side effects are infusion and hypersensitivity reaction. Alimtuzumab, it is anti-CD52 humanized monoclonal antibody. Mechanism of action binds to CD52 expressed on the most T and B cells, monocytes, macrophages, and NK cells, which cause lysis and prolonged depletion of the B and T cells. Side effects can cause mild cytokine release syndrome, neutropenia, anemia, autoimmune thrombocytopenia. Now, belatacept. It is a high affinity homologue of CTLA4 immunoglobulin. It binds to CD80 or CD86 and prevents co-stimulation through CD28. Side effects are post-transplant lymphoproliferative disease. Now, coming to the various immunosuppressive regimens which are used. Immunosuppressive therapy started at the time of transplantation and continued indefinitely as maintenance therapy. Immunosuppressive therapy requirement is highest in the first few weeks after transplantation when risk of acute rejection is highest. Most commonly used drugs is calcineurin inhibitor, and among calcineurin inhibitor we have tacrolimus, which is most commonly used. Most currently include calcineurin inhibitor as the main agent, supplemented with anti-CD25 monoclonal antibody induction therapy as induction therapy. In triple therapy, we use calcineurin inhibitor combined with anti-proliferative agent, mostly mycophenolate mofetil, and steroids. Less often dual therapy is also used, in which calcineurin inhibitor is used along with anti-proliferative agent alone or with steroids alone. mTOR inhibitor is effective immunosuppressive agent for preventing acute rejection after kidney transplantation. It can provide mTOR inhibitor provide non-nephrotoxic alternative to calcineurin inhibitor for maintenance therapy. If acute rejection occurs, it usually responds to a short course of high-dose steroid therapy. But if it fails, then we have to give anti-thymocyte globulin therapy in addition. Now, coming to the complications, complication could be infection or malignancy. Infection, opportunistic infection is most common, especially by virus. Infection risk is highest during the first 6 months. So chemoprophylaxis is given for high-risk patient. Bacterial infection risk is higher during the first month. Prophylactic broad-spectrum antibiotic is given in the perioperative period. Risk of bacterial infection is highest in the patients who are critically ill before or after surgery. TB is concerned in the patients who have previously had mycobacterial infection and in patients from the Indian subcontinent. So chemoprophylaxis for 6 to 12 months after transplantation is given. Now, coming to the viral infection, risk is higher during the first 6 months. Among viral infection, most common viral infection is cytomegalovirus. It may arise because of the reactivation of the latent infection or by the primary infection transmitted by organ from CMV positive donor. Recipient at more risk of CMV infection are those who are CMV seronegative and receive an organ from CMV seropositive. CMV disease typically presents at 4 to 8 weeks without prophylaxis. Various clinical features are high swinging fever, lethargy, leukopenia. CMV may present as pneumonia, hepatitis, retinitis, encephalitis. Diagnosis by PCR to detect viral DNA and histological examination of the biopsy material. So, as a prophylaxis, we give antiviral agents. And most common antiviral agents used are valganciclovir. Other agents used are acyclovir and valacyclovir. For treatment of CMV, we use oral valganciclovir or IV gencyclovir. Now, coming to the herpes simplex virus, it mainly caused due to the reactivation of the latent infections. It can present with a mucocutaneous lesion around mouth and sometimes genitalia. It responds well to topical acyclovir, but in severe case, systemic antiviral therapy is used. Now coming to the VK virus, it is an important cause of graft dysfunction after renal transplantation. Infection with VK virus is universal in childhood, with latent infection in the epithelium of urinary tract. Immunosuppression causes VK virus replication with graft involvement in 1 to 5% of the renal transplant. Treatment is to reduce immunosuppression to allow natural immune mechanism to regain control of the virus. Now, herpes zoster, caused due to the reactivation of latent varicella zoster virus infection, and reactivation of latent varicella zoster virus. Primary varicella zoster virus infection could occur, which could lead which is very serious in immunosuppressed patient, but uncommon because of the acquired immunity. Treatment by systemic antiviral therapy. Now coming to the fungal infection, most important fungus to infect the transplanted patient is Pneumocystis jirovecii, occur most commonly during the first 3 months, present with respiratory symptoms. Diagnosis is by bronchoalveolar lavage fluid examination and by the lung biopsy. Chemoprophylaxis should be continued up to the 6th month after transplantation. Other fungal infection could be Candida or Aspergillus. Now coming to the malignancy, most common malignancy associated with organ transplantation is the skin cancer. And among skin cancer, squamous cell carcinoma is the most common cancer. But basal cell carcinoma and malignant melanoma are also common. And malignancy risk is more if it is associated with viral infection. Viral infection is the etiological role. If viral infection is the etiological role, then malignancy malignancy is more. Chance of malignancy is more. Like carcinoma cervix caused by human papilloma virus, HCC, which is most commonly caused by hepatitis B and C virus, and Kaposi sarcoma by human herpes virus 8.
Okay.
Thank you for your presentation. I have a couple of questions just to have your understanding on this. So what do you mean by induction immunosuppression and maintenance immunosuppression?
Sir, induction therapy is used mainly in the first few weeks of transplantation up to 3 weeks, because at that stage T cell function is to be reduced aggressively. In that time, induction therapy is used.
When do you start induction immunosuppression?
Yes, sir.
When do you start induction immunosuppression?
When do you start? After transplant? When do you start?
Immediately during transplantation. Start.
So it can be even given during, or it can be given just before transplantation as well. Okay, it can be given before transplantation with the surgery or during the surgery. So what are the common in liver transplantation? Any example of induction immunosuppression?
Yes, sir. Most commonly induction immunosuppressant used are interleukin-2, anti-interleukin-2 like basiliximab, daclizumab, mTOR inhibitors like sirolimus, everolimus.
Basiliximab. Generally, induction immunosuppression is not used. Basiliximab is considered, but infection rates have been seen to be quite high. So most centers in Asia and India, they do not use induction immunosuppression. The only induction immunosuppression that is used is steroids at the initial period. But yes, there is a lot of research on induction immunosuppression as opposed to maintenance immunosuppression. Okay, and suppose a patient has had a transplant, and in India, lots of patients come from different parts of the world to have a transplantation. The advice that I will give to the patient when he or she is going back to his home country, will the advice depend on the race of the patient? Suppose a patient is from India. Suppose a patient is from Kenya. So suppose a person is white, black, or brown. Will the general advice to that person vary?
Yes, sir.
What?
Sir, in India, TB is the could be more opportunistic infection could be more common.
Forget medicine. Anything, any general advice that is different for whites and blacks based on the skin color. What are the common malignancies?
Sir,
What are the most common malignancies?
squamous cell carcinoma, sir, most common malignancy associated.
Cancers are very common
Yes.
among the malignancies,
Yes,
which
sir, skin cancer is most.
we have never seen in India, and this is believed to be related to the melanin protection. So whites, it is important you find the recommendations. Use of sunscreen is very important for whites to protect from the skin damage because of sun. So it is one of the recommendations is like you avoid avoid infections by bathing in public swimming pools, avoid drinking the water, those kind of general advice. But skin cancers being high, use of sunscreens, that is very important. Okay, and in practice, what is the most common side effects of tacrolimus and cyclosporine? They are the main immunosuppressants, tacrolimus and cyclosporine. In practice, what is the main side effect that we are worried about?
Nephrotoxicity.
Nephrotoxicity. That's very, very important. They're nephrotoxic. So that's very important. I think that should cover mostly.
Yeah, he has talked of all the drugs which are available and in practice.
Yeah, one last question. Now, immunosuppression predisposes to infection. You agree?
Yes.
Now, suppose a patient has sepsis in the post-op period, has fever, has sepsis, has pus in the abdomen, and all that. Now, if we give immunosuppression, his immunity will be completely, so his ability to fight the infection will be destroyed. So what happens to immunosuppression? Because there is the graft. What do we do for managing infection? While we are managing infection, what happens to immunosuppression?
So decreasing the dose of immunosuppressive therapies.
But
And
then,
high dose of steroid to be given.
do we give high dose steroids to people with fluid infection?
Yes.
Persons.
Decreasing dose of immunosuppressive therapy.
And if the infection is very high, then we may have to stop immunosuppression. But then what will happen to the graft? Will there be rejection? There will rarely be rejection because better than the medicines, better immunosuppression is provided by sepsis. Sepsis is a wonderful immunosuppressant. So if you have ongoing sepsis, the body will not launch that kind of an immune response to have fluoride rejection. So you cannot have fluoride sepsis and rejection at the same time. So just treat the infection. Once the infection start improving, we start rejection starting, and then we bring the immunosuppressant.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Ramdi, for nice discussion. We'll have some more topics on transplantation afterwards. Okay, just a general discussion today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Effort on your part, sir. This is amazing effort. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.